Can you introduce yourself, please?
Well, I'm Dale Gruber, the founder of Gruber Pallets. And this is my wife, Diane Gruber. She's another founder of it, so we co-founded Gruber Pallets. And we started it, I started dabbling in pallets in 1984 in Oakdale, Minnesota on Greystone Avenue in a duplex garage. And in 1987 is when it became a legit company with the state of Minnesota.
He started bringing home pallets, and he would fix them and sell them just for some extra money. And then we had our kids, our two kids at that time. They would pound nails out of the boards for, what was it, a penny a nail? And then Dale would fix them and deliver them. We started the business out of our home on our property, and we did not have any idea how much it was going to grow. And as it grew and we started having semis coming to our house and things, the county came in and said, you can't do this business here. And we were terrified. We just kept thinking, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? So we went out and looked for a place to rent. And again, we just kept thinking, God knows what our needs are going to be, and he's going to take care of us. But we couldn't imagine at that point renting a spot and actually becoming more of a legitimate company. And God provided the spot and provided everything. And we always used to say what Satan means for evil, God uses for good. And so oftentimes the things that we thought when certain employees would come or go, and we'd think, oh my gosh, how are we going to do it without them anymore? Or how are we going to move? Or how are we going to do all these things? God always provided. And it was clear to us that it was always God providing.
God just continued to provide the right people at the right time and help to grow the business.
Why did you decide to start a pallet company?
I know it sounds kind of strange, but it was the freedom that I was after. I always wanted to have my own business, happened to be in the pallet business. I was in the trucking business earlier in my life, and that didn't work out. We were in the nursery business, and that didn't work out. Landscaping business, that didn't work out. So I've had some failures along the way, but I think the funnest part about Gruber Pallets was just the freedom.
I loved the challenge of having to learn and grow. And in a small business, you have to wear every hat. So versus working at a company and pretty much doing the same thing all the time, there were always new challenges presenting themselves, even as simple as getting our first computer, learning accounting, learning bookkeeping. I was challenged all the time because you had to learn enough about HR, you had to learn enough about compliance and the government and all these things. There wasn't a boring day. Mm-hmm. There was always something new to learn and rise to the challenge and figure out.
How were you different when you ran the business?
Oh, jeepers.
Oh, boy.
Well, let's
see what you say.
Yeah, let's start with how we're different. Diane is very structured, very organized, a rule follower, and that just isn't me.
Oh, I pulled out a lot of hairs. Because I made all the policies and he broke all the rules. That kind of summed up the early years. I'd make forms, I would make systems and processes, and Dale would throw them all out the window at any moment.
I'm not a rule follower. I'm a common sense person. And if it makes common sense to me, I don't care what the rule is.
Well, his heart was in the right place, but we definitely don't function the same way.
I think the Lord really brought us together for a number of reasons, but as far as Gruber Pallets goes, I could have never done the stuff that Diane did. And I don't think Diane could have done the stuff that I did. And so we blended and worked together, even though I was the rule breaker. She was always there to kind of rein me in a little bit and find that balance.
How did running a business impact your marriage?
One of probably the hardest things was I liked to be stuck in the back and crunching numbers and doing all that. I don't like to be interrupted, and Dale would come in and want to talk to me, and I'd get so mad. There were just those kind of little logistical things that, and then if we did go home, I used to tell people, if you're in a business with your spouse, when you go home at night and you work somewhere else and you're mad at your boss, you can be mad at your boss all night. But when you go home and have to make dinner for your boss and you go to bed with your boss that night, that's a lot different when you're fighting.
Well, there was a few times that supper wasn't that
good. So, yeah. But those are those challenges you overcome.
Which of your grandkids would you like to take over the business?
That's a hard question to answer because there's 14 of them with one on the way. I would think now that Dale and Luke own it, I would assume that their kids probably would be taking it over. But if I had my way, I would definitely have Adrian and River obviously take it over. But again, it's water over the dam. I don't own it no more.
Who's your favorite grandchild?
I don't really have a favorite grandchild. I love them all in different ways. Each one has a different personality. So at moments, they're special in their own special way. I love Adrian with the breaking arms all the time. That is one thing that is just so special to me.
How did God move into business?
Well, I think the biggest time that really the Lord tested my faith and the trust in the Lord was, there was a young man that came to work for me, and he was in the program, AA program, and I was helping him, taking him to meetings and stuff like that. And through that process, we had hired some people to come in, and I was trying to increase our profit margins. And so in the AA program is an honesty program. And so there were some guys that we had hired and to come in, and one of them was her brother, and then he brought in some guys in there. And through the whole process of that, to kind of make it short, is, and I don't think her brother knew about all of what was going on, but they put us in about $110,000, $120,000 in debt by adding labor and labor and labor, and telling me that we have to ramp up for the sales, but the sales weren't there. And my gut was telling me something wasn't right. And so it got to the point where I was to sell the business to save our home. And they were going to give me 10 cents on the dollar. And I remember going down to the lake. We live on a lake. And I was just down there, just Lord, praying to the Lord and talking to the Lord and what we should do. And I didn't feel right about selling the business. So I remember telling the Lord, if that's what you want, Lord, then so be it. Now I'll do it. But I never had a good feeling in it. And there kept in my mind, don't sell it, don't sell it, don't sell it. And I didn't know if that was coming from the Lord or if that was just my own ego and pride in a way. And so I went back into Diane in the house and said, I'm not going to sell the business. If the business is going to go under, then I'm going to go down with the ship. And went back there, and one of the gentlemen brought me to Lake Elmo Park, the ball field there in downtown Lake Elmo. And we were on the bleachers, and there was 2 days to sell. And he brought me, asked to go there, and we went there and sat there, and he said, you will be selling this business if you don't, I know people and they won't ever find you. So basically it was threatening my life. And I said, no, I'm going to sell the business. And so we got back to the shop and to the office. I went into, at that time, Janine was working for us, office manager. And I said, make their checks out. And she made the checks out. I signed them. And I went up to those 4 people and I fired them. And the guy that brought me to the ballpark, when he said, you can't do that. And I says, as long as I own this business, I can do whatever I want. And you're fired. Take your stuff and go. And before he left out the door, he says, you watch your back. And so that was a trust. After that, it all happened. Now I'm $120,000 in debt, owe everybody and their mother money, and figuring out, okay, Lord, I didn't sell it. How am I going to come through this? Well, back to the guy that I was helping, going to AA, his father came to town. And when his father came to town, this gentleman must have told his dad that something was going on and whatever. And so when I was talking to that gentleman, he asked me, my son said there's some things going on. And I kind of broke down and told him what happened. And so he asked to see our books. And I showed him our books. He went back 3 years. And he said, as he was there probably for 4 or 5 hours. And he looked at him, he says, it's the oldest scam, Dale. Guys come in, they build up the business as far as labor goes, run it down, they bring an outside guy in to buy it off, and they were trying to take advantage of you. You were making money in that. And at that point, he wrote me a check out, and I just met him. And he wrote me a check out for $15,000. And I said, I can't take that money. I don't know if I'm going to make it. And, and he says, no, you will. Send me your P&Ls and let's talk about it. And so for the next 3 years, I kept sending this gentleman, he lived in another state, and I kept sending him my P&Ls and we would talk. And that was in September. In October, he came back. He flew back in here, looked at October's numbers, and he gave me another check for $15,000. And told me what to do and that, and get a hold of the IRS and all the people that I owed money, and I talked to everyone with that. And meanwhile, the IRS did show up. Guy's name was Dwight. I'll never forget Dwight. And I was sitting at my desk. And he was on the other side of my desk. And he opened up his briefcase and he says, looked at some paperwork, and he says, well, Mr. Gruber, looks like you owe me $110,000. Well, that didn't sit too good with me. And so I said to Dwight, using a few words that weren't good, I don't owe you a dime. I owe the American people. And if you want to shut this place down, let's go out there and tell these 30 employees right now that it's done. Or let's cut a deal. And he said, well, I can't cut a deal. And I said, well, then you go find somebody that can make a deal with me, and we'll make a deal. And so he left, and we made out a deal. And I told this gentleman that was helping me, I made a deal with the IRS for 2 years in a payment structure. He came back in December. He gave us a check for $1,000 for Christmas and said, use this for Christmas.
Not the IRS guy.
Not the IRS guy, the guy that gave me the 15 and the 15. And then he gave us $1,000 for Christmas because we were pretty broke. And he wrote me a check out for $50,000. And he said, this will get you over the hump. Do this, 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 and this. And that's what I did. And so I never had to make a payment back to him until I got the IRS paid off. And after I got the IRS paid off, and meanwhile, through that 2-year period, he borrowed me another $50,000 because I was growing, and I bought some semi-trailers with it. And when I got the IRS paid off, I talked to him and said, I'm ready to make you payments and that. And he wanted to just make payments. At that point, I had owed him $130,000 because he borrowed me 50, and 30. And he didn't want to charge me no interest. And I told this gentleman, I said, no, that's not the right thing to do. I got myself in this mess, and it's your money, and it shouldn't cost you no money. And so he asked me what the bank would charge me for interest, and at that time it was 8%. And he said, I'll charge you 6%. And so I made out a payment structure to this gentleman, and I paid him every dime I owed him with the interest of 6%, which was 2% less than what the bank would charge me. And so through all of that, I realized how God had his hand upon everything that I didn't know. And it's in business today because of what God has done.
Do you think John Wayne will be proud of Gruber Pallets?
John Wayne would have been proud of just the perseverance and the no-quit attitude. You talk about John Wayne. Let me tell you that John Wayne was a very big influence in my life. People say that movies don't have an impact on kids. I think a lot of the grit that I had came from three people. One was my Uncle Si. One was one of the Quaid brothers. And the other one was John Wayne. And so he really on the movie screen of all of his films showed me perseverance, toughness, never quit. So I think John Wayne would have been proud of Gruber Pallets.
Crocs or cowboy boots?
My Lucchese cowboy boots. And you notice that's what I'm wearing today.
When you dream of heaven, is there pallets?
I think the Lord's got a pallet house for me. There'll be holes in it, the slats, and that's so I can see through. But I think he's got and I don't think it's a big mansion. I just think he's got a little shanty for me, made out of pallets.
Well, Jesus did tell the man to pick up his pallet and walk.
Yeah, it's in, I'm trying to remember where that is, but there is a verse in the Bible. Pick up your pallet and walk. So there's pallets in heaven.
How many quarters have you bit over the years? Have you swallowed one?
I've never swallowed one, but I have a granddaughter that did. But that's a famous saying. Here's a quarter, bite on it until the pain goes away.
What do you plan to do in retirement?
That is a good question. I don't feel retired. I don't own Gruber Pallets anymore, but I own Gruber Properties, Trinity Select. I would like to do some traveling. I don't really feel like I'm retired. I don't know if I'll ever retire. I'll always be doing something.
Hopefully what's come through on this is we can look back at so many stories in our life and just see, as I said earlier, God's fingerprints and direction.
On everything, yeah.
Our family, our business, our home, school, our grandchildren, everything.
I think I would tell Nikki and Hannah, continue to pray for wisdom for Luke and Dale. Be faithful prayers for them to give them wisdom. And, for Luke and Dale, do the things, do the right things that will honor the Lord in whatever you do, and do the next right thing. And God will guide them.
Yeah, I would say pretty much the same thing. That I would advise them to always be seeking God's will for Gruber Pallets, not necessarily their own. God's will, God's direction, God's wisdom and strength, And who knows what will happen. But we would want it to be run by the two godly young men that they are in that way.
Yeah, Luke and Dale will take it a whole lot farther than I would ever have dreamed it to be. And they're both godly men. They're both good businessmen, and they'll treat their employees good, and they'll take it to places I would have never dreamed of.